Ok, ngày hôm nay chúng ta lại quay lại xem học Khan Academy về ngôn ngữ như thế nào. Kể cả các bạn muốn học toán, học gì thì các bạn cũng phải học Reading and Language Art. Và có phần từ lớp up đến tận lớp 2. Nhưng mà thôi chúng ta học từ lớp 2 đấy. Và do vậy để học được tiếng Anh như tiếng mẹ đẻ, ngày xưa mình học đại học cũng học theo kiểu học từ nào lại dịch từ đấy sang tiếng Việt. Vì lúc đó là đi học đại học nhưng mà có thể học tốc độ cực nhanh. Rồi chúng ta hãy học bài về the moon. Xem nào, the moon. Trước tiên chúng ta hãy mở nghe để biết được cách phát âm các cái từ đó. Đó, bạn sẽ thấy ngay welcome to this unit about the moon là bạn có hình the moon, cái này gọi tiếng Anh là the moon. Và như vậy với một trình độ tiếng Anh bản xứ của bạn đã phải đọc một đoạn rất dài ở lớp 2. Và sau đó các bạn sẽ tất nhiên là chúng ta cứ đọc dần, không cần hiểu tất cả các từ mới ở bài này vội. Các bạn sẽ học dần dần nghĩa của nó hoặc có thể chép lại toàn bộ này và cố gắng phát âm nó thành lời. For example, have you ever looked up at the sky, night sky, and wondered about the moon? How does it work? What is it like to visit? Và nếu các bạn chỉ nhìn các cái chữ không thì nó sẽ không thành tiếng được, còn lâu bạn mới viết. What is it made out of? People have been watching, learning, and writing about the moon for thousands of years. This unit will answer some of these questions about the moon and maybe get you to start asking your own question too. Đó, các bạn stop and think. Learn about the moon and how it works. Read about characters that also wonder about the moon. Find out how the moon affects the earth by watching videos to help you understand what good reader and writer do. Reading and answering questions about literature and information and text. Learning new academic words. In order to answer this essential question, how do we tell fact from fiction? Okay, you can click to. What does it mean stop to think? Okay. What do you think of when you think of the moon? What do you really know about it? What questions do you have about it? And click to attribution. Untitled by Mill Pixabay license. Okay, doesn't matter. So you can have word like continue, definition to keep doing something. Sentence mean continue to think about what it would be like to live on the moon. Word, new word like crater. Definition: a large round hole caused by something hitting the surface of the planet or moon very hard. Sentence: the moon is full of large craters that we can see from Earth. So, new word decide, you maybe know, don't know, to decide. Definition: to make up your mind. Sentence. When Cassia was 6 years old, she decided that she wanted to live on Mars. Disagree. Agree and disagree. Definition. To not agree with someone or something. To not think the same way. Sentence. I know you think that the moon is the most wonderful thing in the night sky, but I disagree. I think the stars are the most wonderful. Word gravity. Definition. The force that pull object toward another. Big object. Sentence. The moon's gravity is less powerful than the Earth's gravity because the moon is smaller than the Earth. Word misunderstand. You may know. Understand. And now, misunderstand. Definition. To not understand or to understand something incorrectly. Sentence. Do not misunderstand me, said Maya. Why the moon may look like cheese is really a big drop. Word orbit. Wow, a lot of word. Definition. To travel around something. That you travel about something that goes your orbit. Like moon travel around Earth. We call moon orbit. And Earth move or travel around the sun. That become Earth orbit. Sentence. The moon orbit or travel around the Earth about once every 27 days. Word remember. Can you remember it? Or can you remember also was? Definition. To be able to think of something again. Sentence. My dad asked, do you remember when the moon looked orange last year? Wow, difficult. I don't remember. And the word drought. Definition. Bumpy, harsh, or rocky, uneven. So there are a lot of meaning. Sentence. When NASA planned for the landing on the moon, they had to think about the moon's round surface. And we have the word surface. Surface, and you have surface. Definition. The outside or the top layer of something. The moon's surface had soft and gray dust because there is no air, so there is no wind, and then the moon's surface has soft and gray dust. We do not make air pollution because there is no air in the moon. Tide. Oh, the good word. When you visit the beach, you see the water rise up and down and it goes tide. Definition. The rising and falling of the ocean level. Sentence. When Jack was at the beach, the tide was low, so he was able to see the sea star in the tide pool. Okay? Next video. I don't need to read.
Hey,
now.
what's the big idea?
Yes, exactly. Wait, what? Oh, hello, squirrel.
You heard me, Big Legs. What's the big idea? With you tromping all over my patch of forest without so much as a how do you do?
I'm sorry. How do you do?
Hello.
How can I make it up to you?
Well, okay.
So we need to listen carefully and know how to speak out.
Okay, I'm working on a school assignment.
Squirrels have school?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, go on.
So I've got this newspaper article, and Mr. Badgerton says I have to draw out what the main idea is. How is that different from a summary?
Okay, a summary is all the key details of an article or a story, but a main idea is bigger than details. It's what those details add up to. A main idea is the key information that the author wants you to know after you've finished reading the text. So, for example, what's going on in your article?
So you can write down those words to know what is the main idea. The key information that would want you to know after reading.
It's about the creek in the forest and how everyone wants to drink from it, but the otters want to swim in it, the bears want to fish in it, and the beavers want to build a dam in it and turn the whole thing into a pond.
Not as peaceful of a forest as I thought, huh?
Not so much, no.
What you just told me is a summary of the events of the news story.
Bạn có thể bị sốc do tốc độ nói của họ rất nhanh, vì đó mới là tiếng Anh đúng chuẩn. Khi mà người ta nói chuyện mình, người ta đã giảm tốc độ xuống khá nhiều rồi, mình hiểu được. Còn nếu muốn mình không hiểu, lập tức khai ông Tây nói chuyện với nhau bằng một tốc độ bình thường, thế là những người học tiếng nước ngoài mà không phải như một ngôn ngữ thứ hai thường là không nghe được gì.
But the big idea there is that there's a conflict or fight over who has access to the creek.
So you just zipped all the supporting details out of my summary and made it more about the ideas?
Yeah, exactly. The main idea is that different animals want to use the creek.
Can you give me a more complicated example?
I would love to. Why don't we take a look at this text about brain growth? So here's a passage about training your brain. I'm going to read it, I'm going to make notes, and then I'm going to summarize each paragraph. And then I'll take all those summaries, put them together, and that'll help us come up with a main idea. So, here we go. Your brain gets stronger when you exercise.
Thế vậy đấy là một điểm yếu của Khan Academy. Tự nhiên lại vọt ra một bài What is the main idea? Và cực khó với chữ, cực nhỏ và hơi bị nhiều chữ so với lớp 2. Nếu bạn học A-Slut, bạn sẽ thấy người ta sẽ có một bài đơn giản về Moon, Running Around the Earth. Bạn sẽ biết được cách đọc các cái từ mà chúng ta vừa học ở đoạn trước. Tại sao nó ra một cái bài khó thế này? Next video xem sao. Oh,
Hello readers, this is Professor
lại
Mario
còn ra
Molina.
một bài khó hơn nữa. Trời ơi, sao mà có nhầm lẫn gì không? Next video.
Hello readers, today I'm going to be talking about text features, which is to say the parts of a text that aren't
Có vẻ như là
just
quá
words.
cao đối với trình độ
We look at
của
text
các bạn
features to
lớp
get a
2.
better understanding of what the text is all about. Although they're not words,
Nào
like I
mình sẽ
said,
phải
text
tìm lại
features
xem là
help our
bài
reading
của lớp
comprehension.
2 của
So what's a good
A-Slut
example
thế
of a
nào?
text feature? Well, let's start with, say, a map. Maps are a great example of a feature of the text that isn't made up of words.
Ok, có sự nhầm lẫn nào không? À đây, thôi. Nào, có Moon Unit Vocabulary. Oh, video tại sao lại cao vậy? Và mấy bạn đọc toàn bộ những cái này khi là nó xem nào. Các video khác xem sao.
Hello, readers. Today I'd like to talk to you about the moral of the story. Which story? Well, we'll get to that. First, what is a moral? It's a lesson, usually about how you're supposed to treat other people. I think we can say that if a story has a moral, it's trying to teach you how to be a good person. Aesop's fables are full of these. There's the story of the tortoise and the hare, which I'll tell you very quickly if you're unfamiliar. The slow-moving tortoise and the speedy hare have a foot race, and the hare is so sure that she'll beat the tortoise that she stops to take a nap during the race. Meanwhile, the tortoise slowly and steadily continues onwards and crosses the finish line while the hare is sleeping. That's confetti as the tortoise crosses the finish line. The moral of the story is slow and steady wins the race. You can beat an overconfident person even if they're more talented than you if you try really hard and take it slow but steady. But it's not just old stories from ancient Greece that have morals. The stories around us are full of lessons about how to treat one another. So, How do you figure out what the moral of a story is? Good question. One way to do it is to ask yourself what the problem of the story is, or how the problem was solved. From the hare's perspective, the problem in The Tortoise and the Hare is that she lost the race. What could she have done to avoid that happening? Well, she probably shouldn't have stopped to take a nap. From the tortoise's perspective, the problem is solved. He won the race. And how did he do that? By maintaining a slow, steady pace for the whole race. And then you take that lesson that the characters learned, and you say, okay, so this is true for everyone. It's not just that hares should make sure not to nap during foot races. It's that people...
Okay, let's try the moon video in YouTube. Moon! To the moon. All right. It's a song.
But I think he was a drone because I don't see any. So I think
Talking
he used a
to the
drone,
moon.
but I don't see any drone up there.
So,
Maybe entitled you import
okay, let's see. Moon, National Geographic. Is it for children? Oh, this one is better.
If you want to achieve better results, make a great impression, and save time at work, you should get Grammarly.
It's the brightest and most noticeable object in the night sky. But if you spend much time observing it, you will see that the moon is never quite the same from one night to the next. The moon has something we call phases, which means that it appears to change shape a little bit every night. To understand why this happens, we need to talk a little bit about the way the Earth and the moon move together in space. The moon orbits around the Earth, much like the Earth orbits around the sun. However, while the Earth takes about 365 days to travel once around the sun, 1 year, the moon completes its orbit around the Earth in only 29.5 days, or about 1 month. That's actually where the idea of months came from, the time it takes for the moon to complete one orbit around the Earth. And the words moon and month come from the same root. Despite how bright it looks in the sky, the moon does not have any light of its own. It only appears to shine brightly in the sky because light from the sun hits it and bounces off. Just like the Earth, the moon has a day side and a night side, with half of it in sunlight and half of it in darkness at any one time. As the moon travels through its orbit around the Earth, that dividing line between day and night, called the terminator, is visible from different angles, giving the impression that different amounts of the moon are lit up on different days. The cycle of lunar phases begins with the new moon. At new moon, the moon appears completely dark because the unlit side is facing the Earth. New moon is the only time in the lunar cycle when a solar eclipse could happen, because it is the only time that the moon is between the sun and the Earth. After a few days, once the moon has moved along a little in its orbit, we can begin to see some of the moon's day side from Earth. What we see is just a thin slice of light called a crescent. We call it a waxing crescent because waxing means growing. The crescent moon will grow a little bit thicker every night until it reaches the next phase, first quarter. The first quarter moon is sometimes called the half moon because it appears to us that half of the moon is illuminated, but it is called first quarter because the moon is 1/4 of the way through its cycle. As the days pass, the moon continues to grow, soon entering its next phase, the waxing gibbous. Gibbous means humped or swollen, and again, we call it waxing because it grows thicker every night until it reaches the next phase, the full moon. A full moon is the biggest, brightest, and easiest phase of the moon to see. The moon rises at sunset and is up all night, so if you are outside and the sky is clear, it's hard to miss. The moon is halfway through its orbit around the Earth and is now on the opposite side of the Earth from the sun. During a full moon is the only time that a lunar eclipse can happen, because that is the only time that the Earth's shadow could fall on the moon. As the moon continues in its path, it appears to shrink again as we begin to see more and more of its dark side. A few days after the full moon, the moon will be a gibbous again, but this time it's a waning gibbous. Waning means shrinking or getting smaller, and so the moon will be waning for the rest of its orbit. The next phase is another half moon, but this time it's called third quarter, or sometimes last or final quarter, because the moon is 3/4 of the way through its orbit. Soon the half moon shrinks into a waning crescent, which will continue to shrink night after night until it vanishes completely into the next new moon. Big and bright and beautiful, different every night, but repeating the same cycle over and over. The moon is one of the best objects in the sky to observe, especially for someone just getting started. The next time you look up and see the moon in the sky, take a moment and see if you can identify which phase of the moon you're seeing, and try to figure out which one will come next.
Thank you, cảm ơn. Vậy chứng tỏ là để học language art của Khan, chúng ta phải kết hợp với cả đồng chí YouTube nữa. Tại sao mà học về Moon mà các đồng chí lại cho chúng tôi nhiều thông tin thế này? Có nghĩa là các bạn học rất nhiều về fiction, non-fiction, main idea, element, absurd story. Ok, để lần sau chúng ta so sánh xem. Với phần mềm trả tiền Accelus thì người ta dạy language art như thế nào. Bye bye for tonight. See you tomorrow.